This story happened to two friends who decided to spend the summer at their summer cottage. They got into the habit of resting on the porch every day after working on the plot. And so one day they settled down on their favorite place and, having smoked, began to talk about various topics. When dusk was falling, one of the friends, Sergei, got up and went to make tea, and the other, Nikolai, continued to watch the arrival of night. And suddenly he saw two light spots moving from the gate to the cottage, and they were doing it as two invisible people walking in an unfamiliar area. They stopped, examined interesting places, went around them, and moved on. Later, Nicholas recalled, "The spots strolled leisurely through the garden without paying any attention to me. They were the size of a soccer ball, shone dim, as if matte light, shadows did not cast." Meanwhile, Sergei came out on the porch, holding a kettle in his hands. Suddenly, the spots rushed under his feet, and from surprise, he poured boiling water on the strange creatures. Immediately, there was a wild shriek. The spots recoiled from Sergei. There was a soft pop, and suddenly, everything disappeared. Only then the friends finally regained the power of speech and began to find out who of them had managed to see what. Without realizing what the matter was, they went into the house, not yet suspecting what night awaited them. It turned out that there was no light in the cottage, so they had to light a candle. Sergei locked the door, and the friends began to prepare for sleep. Soon there was a strong knock on the door, which in principle could not be, because the gate to the garden Nikolai had locked, and the height of the stone fence around the site excluded any possibility of uninvited guests. Nikolai told his friend not to open it, but he did not obey. He did not even ask, as usual, "Who's there?" and opening the door, boldly went out onto the porch. However, there was no one there. Then Sergei went around the dacha, walked along the path to the gate to make sure that it was locked, and returned to the house. No sooner had he closed the door behind him than the knocking came again. Sergei shuddered, but immediately opened the door. No one. Meanwhile, Nikolai approached his comrade, resolutely slammed the door, slid the deadbolt, and went into the bedroom. Sergei followed him, and the friends, having extinguished the candle, lay down on the prepared beds. But they did not have to rest long. There was another knock, this time at the window, and then everything went quiet. The frightened men nervously smoked and waited to see what would happen next. About half an hour passed, and suddenly, something white and shapeless looked through the window and immediately disappeared. Nikolai got up and pulled back the curtains, but about 10 minutes later, something rose above the curtains and looked into the room again. In the dim light of the moon, the friends were able to make out a ghastly human face, glittering eyes, furrowed eyebrows, long tangled hair, and tightly compressed, thin, wrinkled lips. The creature distorted its mouth in such a terrible grin that the friends, unable to bear it, took refuge in the darkest corner of the bedroom. Suddenly, someone's translucent hands with curled fingers appeared under the window, and they gradually stretched until they reached the table and dropped the candle from it to the floor, and then disappeared. The witch outside the window, meanwhile, continued to laugh. The bolder Sergei tried to calm his friend by saying that they were both just imagining things. But then he was interrupted by a loud voice outside the window. "Don't believe me? Then look." About what they saw next, Sergei told the following. "In a dark corner of the bedroom, just like that, right in front of us, we saw a fresh grave, and in it 4 corpses that were lying in a huddle on top of each other and moving. Then one of them rose to his full height, followed by the others. The first one muffled and asked, 'Why did they lift us up? What has happened to us?' To which the other answered him, 4 of us were killed. We've been lying here for a long time, since 1913. It's hard for us." But then the witch ordered the skeletons to disappear. However, the nightmares did not end there. The same voice said, addressing one of the men, "Here is your funeral, Nikolai Stepanovich. Look carefully." After that, the friends saw a clear picture of Nikolai's coffin being taken out of the house and placed in front of the hearse. The witch commented, "You, Nikolai, will die of cancer in exactly 5 years." Nikolai and Sergei, unable to tear themselves away from the terrible sight, continued to watch. Here, the coffin was lifted into a hearse and taken to the cemetery. Then there appeared a hill of black earth over the grave, and on it a multitude of wreaths, and above them a high cross. Finally, the vision disappeared, and the witch, mocking and laughing, asked Nicholas, "Do you want me to show you how you will be tormented in the other world?" The unfortunate man lost his head and went under the bed to get an axe. Thus armed, he ran out of the cottage and came face to face with a terrible old woman on whom he swung the axe. She seemed to be frightened and began to retreat, or rather slowly dissolve into darkness. Soon its outlines became vague, and now 2 light spots ran along the beds away from Nikolai and disappeared behind the gate. All the rest of the night, the men did not sleep a wink, sitting in front of the burning candle. Just before dawn, the witch must have decided to say goodbye. In complete silence, 2 hands again appeared from the wall under the window, reached the candle and extinguished it. Sergei tried to grab their hands, but his fingers went through the void, feeling nothing. Disappearing into the wall, the ghostly hand wagged its finger.